guys, what's up? It's Julian. I'm back again with another Lo-Fi House tutorial. Today we are going to be starting the 3-part Lo-Fi House full track tutorial, I guess. I'm going to show you from start to finish how to make a Lo-Fi House track, like everything from sound design to making a kick to mixing the whole thing. I'm going to be showing you. So let's dive in. To begin with, I've just dropped in 2 cassette noise samples, which will be in the sample pack that's in the description below that you can download. It's going to have this project file, all the samples and presets and MIDI that I use in this. But yeah, so I just layered 2 together this time, just to give it a little bit of a different flavor, I guess. It's just this one and this one. And so those 2 together sounds like this. And I have just thrown on a little bit of low pass filter for some flavor, and a bit warmer to bring out the resonance from the low pass filter. So what I've also done in this track is I have gone through and mapped out the entire track. So I've given it, an intro, parts where the drums start to come in, all this kind of stuff, and then an outro, and some drops and some breaks, I guess. But yeah, so what the purpose of this is that it's what I did in my first tutorial as well, and it gives you more of an idea of where the track is gonna go. So while you're making it, for example, when I put the cassette noise in, I could just drag it in all the way through. And this is by no means a definitive length that your track has to be, but I mean it's just something to start from, I suppose. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just bringing in the main sample. I just have this little R&B guitar sample. You may have heard it in the intro. It just sounds like this. I'm gonna do some processing to it while it's playing. So yeah, that's just kind of a cool little sample I found. I thought it kind of sounded like Mall Grab Can't Get You Out of My Mind, so that's why I wanted to use it. I like those little distorted guitars that come in the second half. But yeah, so I've just dragged that out throughout the whole thing, because that's just sort of how I envision the track. But that's really why these are so useful, is because you can see it that way. And to make these markers, in case you don't know, all you do is you just right-click up in this area, and you hit Add Locator, and then you can name them. I'm going to delete that one. And you just select them and hit Delete to get rid of them. But yeah, so after I've done that, I'm going to start bringing in, let's put in a kick. So I have these kicks that I made. There's some claps and some hi-hats and some kicks in here. But I particularly this one. So I'm going to put it in here at this part where it says kick comes in. And let's make this kind of little pattern. I'm just going to do one of these. Alright, let's just duplicate this over a bunch. And there's really no definitive pattern you necessarily need to use, but this is just one that I thought sounds cool here, and it's the one I used while I was messing with it before this tutorial. So yeah, it kind of sounds like this. And the thing is that I'm not really too concerned with mixing right now. I mean, obviously, mixing is very important with this style of music because, a really big part of it is the flavor of the sounds, the texture they have and the atmosphere they have. But I'm really just concerned with getting all the stuff down and getting all my ideas down right now. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I have this little vocal loop that I want to use, and so I'm going to put that in all the parts that I think it should be. I think something like this, maybe? I'm not sure. Like I said, right now, it's just kind of the part where I'm just testing everything out and getting a feel for what we want to do with the track. Maybe I'll do this. Yeah. But, so after I did that with the sample isn't going to sound very good, as you'll hear. They're definitely not in tune with each other, so we gotta fix that. And what we can do is we can go in and just pitch them around. So when I was messing with this, I found that if you pitch the vocal sample up 2 semitones and the main sample down 6, it sounds pretty good together. And this isn't, like I said, this isn't like any kind of definitive thing. You'll have these samples, you can mess with them, whatever you think sounds cool. I don't know if you end up making a track out of this or something. But yeah, so together that sounds like this. So I just was doing a little bit of processing while that was playing. And yeah, all I'm doing is I just put a bit warmer on here, and then a little bit of reverb. I really just want to give this vocal loop a bit of texture. It already kind of has what I want it to have, and that's a big part of this, is like selecting sounds that already get you where you're trying to go without having to do too much. You know, like, they always say, like, you can't polish a turd. You can't, like, make a sound good or make a sound a way that it, like, fundamentally isn't. So yeah, like, that's part of using this loop. Like, you can hear the dry one. Already has that cool lo-fi house feel to it. You know, it's kind of like obscured. You can't really tell what it is. I mean, it's obviously like a woman's voice, but you can't really tell what's going on. It's just kind of weird. And it's got that lo-fi sound to it. It's got some background noise too. It's just like a cool little sound. And so that with this takes it all the way. And then I just put this low pass filter on here and made it do a little sweep here because I wanted it to fade in. So just kind of simple. Just wanted to do that. The other thing I wanted to experiment with is maybe putting a little bit of erosion on here. To give it like that kind of old sampler, like Daft Punky type of feel when they were using like the 12-bit samplers or whatever. Or 8-bit, I don't know what it is, but those kind of sounds are very cool to me. But I put it before the filter because if I put it after the filter, you'll hear when it's sweeping up. You can hear the bit crushing over top of the filter. It doesn't sound so good, but like this. Now it sort of comes into it. So next thing I think I'm going to do, I've got the vocal loop sort of in all the places I want it to be. I got all this stuff. I think the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting in some more drums. And there's not really like a particular path I want to follow with this. I'm just sort of experimenting. But I do know, I think I like this hi-hat. Again, right now we're just sort of setting up the track. I'm just getting a feel for things. I just cut this hi-hat there because I want to be able to duplicate it. And, yeah. So I'm just going to duplicate that a bunch of times. And let's see how this sounds. Just like this. Alright, so that sounds pretty good. It's a pretty good little hi-hat sample. It's just got like a lot of lo-fi characteristics to it, I guess. And same thing here. I just duplicated it out throughout the track because I have the arrangement already. So let's get a clap over top of that. I like this number 5 one. I always end up using the dirtiest ones, but I guess that's just the sounds I like. So I'm just doing like a simple, you know, like house clap loop with this. I'm going to cut these out here at the end of the bar in the little like break build thing. And yeah, let's put that in the drop and hear how that sounds. I'm probably going to turn it down. I'm not going to do too much processing to these just yet, but I will in the next tutorial where I'm going to like really make them all sort of gel together. And I'll probably add more drums in the next one as well when we start to go back into this track and make it a little bit more final. But yeah, so I'm just putting this clap over here. And we're going to cut this out a bar before again. Let's hear how that sounds. Okay, cool. I just had to take the vocal loop from here because I realized I hadn't pitched this one down yet. So that sounds pretty good. The next thing I actually think I'm going to do to this, because I like how this sounds, is I'm going to select, I have all these claps selected, and I'm going to move them slightly back so they're a little bit off of the grid. and you see the kick hits there and the clap will hit there. This might be too much, I'm not sure, but it's gonna sound good, and I'll explain why in a second. Okay, cool, there. Sometimes you just kind of have to, like, fine-tune it and, like, get a feel for where you really want it to be. But the reason for doing this is because I feel like it gives it a little bit more human character, I guess. I mean, if you're more advanced with producing, you've probably heard this, like, a million times, and it's not really anything new. But, yeah, I mean, it just kind of, like, by doing that, it kind of makes it a little bit more interesting, too. And it's, like, a little bit of a newer thing as well, because, like, you couldn't do that when you were programming on, like, a 909 or an 808. And yeah, it's just, like, a generally good thing to do, and it sounds good with the groove in this track. So let's listen to, like, a little bit of this break, and then into the drop, and we'll see what it needs, at least for the rest of this tutorial. So, yeah, here it goes. Okay, so the next thing that we need is we need a bass line. And I haven't shown you guys how to do, like, a proper bass line yet in one of my tutorials. Because I've shown you how to do a bass line, like, outside of a track, and I've shown you how to make a track that didn't really have, like, a bass line. It just had, like, some kicks and toms. But now I'm going to show you how to make a proper house bass line. So what I have is I have this little MIDI file. You'll have this too if you download all this. And you can put this in any DAW, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, you should be able to. But what I'm going to do, and this is very important for making house music, is when you're making a bass line, like, especially for house and, like, I guess, like, techno and stuff, it's very important that it gels with the kick really well. So what you want to do is be listening to the kick while you're like, making your bass line. So I've just dropped a little operator on here, and I'm just making, like, a sub bass. Too crazy, just, like, a very simple kind of sub bass sound. But the point of listening to the kick while listening to the bass is that the relationship between the kick and the bass is, like, the foundation for this kind of music. I mean, that's where, like, 98%, I'd say, of your groove is coming from, and what's making people, like, bob their heads and dance along is the bass line, but also how well it's working with the kick. Like, if you can get that low end working nicely and, like, really get that foundation built, everything else will come so much easier when you're making your track. And oftentimes, actually, when I make tracks, I start with the kick and bass line and then build everything around that. In this case, I didn't really do that, but, you know, it's just on a case-by-case basis. But yeah, so I'm just soloing both of them, and when I make a change to either of them, that's what I do. You'll see in the next tutorial when we dive in more with processing what I end up doing. But I'm going to put a little bit, I'm going to turn up the second operator on operator, just to get a little bit more harmonics in the sound. It's just doing a little bit of FM, but I'm not going to turn it way up. If you turn it up just a little bit, you can just get a subtle sound that almost sounds a little bit more like a bass guitar. Like, it's just a little, it's, like, still very subby and very low and, like, deep, but it's got a little bit more to it that you can sort of feel. So let's hear that. And now I've just turned the sustain down all the way and the decay down a little bit, so it's more like a pluck type of sound. That'll help the groove. Okay, cool. So we have this. I'm going to put a bit of saturation on here, just the A Bit Warmer preset that I use in, like, every video ever. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give this bass texture and also make it sort of more audible, because obviously just sub frequencies can't always be heard on on every sort of system. Like, obviously any club system or, like, speaker system, you can hear them. But, like, on phones and stuff, you can't always hear it. But by doing this and adding these sort of higher harmonics onto the sound, you can make it more audible on, like, phones and stuff like that, and, like, cheap earbuds. So let's hear all that in the mix. Okay, so I'm really liking this, especially when the vocal sample comes out and you just get that main sample with the bass. But the bass isn't really grooving quite enough. You can hear it sounds kind of stiff. The groove is there, but it's not quite enough. And there's some things we can do to accentuate this. So I'm gonna solo the kick and the bass line again. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn on the decay on the main operator here. It's more of a pluck, and the groove is more accentuated because it's not holding out for as long. So every time a note hits, you're hearing it more, if that makes any sense. The other thing I'm gonna do is I'm going into the Ableton core library. This just comes with Ableton whenever you have it, or whenever you get it. And I'm gonna take one of these Logic grooves, the Logic swings. They just go up. Each number is like more and more swung. I believe I was using this one right. You can hear that's like tick, tick, tick. It's a little bit more swung than just the straight 16 notes we have now. So now that sounds like. And I'm just dragging it over to each of these other MIDI clips. I could just copy this one, but it's kind of just what I'm doing, I guess. So let's hear that in the track. Okay, so now we got a pretty good groove going. We've started to build our track up. We've got all our parts mapped out. In the next one, I'm gonna go more into processing the sounds and giving them more texture and doing things to make the track a little bit more interesting. So I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe and comment and let me know what you thought. Share this if you think it's worth other people finding out. But yeah, thank you so much. I will see you again in 2 days.